your what
Thank
is
you
your
so much, Violetta. So it is now hour 22. And I imagine it was for the first time I haven't been part of being able to be part of most of the sessions in the Connectathon, but I imagine it was really great. I look forward to listening to all the recordings. And for this next session, we're actually really going to talk about something that. Oh, are we there? Oh, I'm so happy to see Sue here too. Wow, I just invited you today. Thank you, Sue. It's great to have
Hi.
you. So welcome everybody, and thanks for those who are able to have this conversation with me. I think it's going to be a really good one, right? So for those who don't know me, my name's Ferial. At the moment, I am the CEO for Living Cities Earth. I also project manage one of our key projects in Living Cities Earth we call Global Mayors Academy. And so today, a lot of our discussion is also about why do any of this, right? Why is it that is it important? Is it not important? And I think it's necessary to sometimes take the time to actually consider and think about what we are actually doing and whether it is necessary or not, or whether we need to change direction, do something differently, right? Because I think sometimes we can also get stuck into a groove of this is what I'm working on, and I just continue to go in that direction. But what is life actually asking of us in this moment? What is, what is the field saying? And I think so. The question today is like in the Connectathon, right? The Connectathon was started a few years ago. And the whole idea was a gathering, yes, but 24 hours of collective pause, a moment where we come together to reflect, to reconnect, and to consciously explore the future we actually want to live into, right? And because we are co-creators of that future, what do we contribute? And in this particular hour, we're stepping into a question that feels both urgent, I think, and full of immense possibility. Now, can cities become living labs? Should they? And if yes, why? Because if we look at where we are right now and where we're going, I mean, we look at the world around us, we look at the threat of third world wars and, bombs being dropped on different nations, et cetera. And then we're not even talking about climate change and all the other challenges, right? So by 2050, approximately, or at least it's just estimated that 68% of humanity, and that's nearly 6 billion people, will be living in urban spaces. So the question isn't just how we build cities, but rather how do we create places that are truly alive? Places that nurture human well being, ecological harmony, and collective intelligence. Places where we don't just survive, but we can truly thrive. And beyond that, where we flourish together with the rest of nature, recognizing that our survival is deeply intertwined with theirs. Now, at Living Cities Earth, we see cities as more than infrastructure. We see them as living systems, spaces where we are already learning, experimenting, and evolving. And that's where the idea of the living lab comes in. What if our cities, towns, villages became places where now more than ever we consciously. So, yes, we are doing it, but how could we do this consciously and intentionally? Testing new ways of living, governing, learning, building, and relating to one another and to the earth. What if they became places of continuous learning and regeneration, where innovation is not extractive, but life enhancing? So this has really been the big question at the heart of why we created the Global Mayors Academy. But the question still becomes, is it necessary? Are we just preempting something that's not even necessary? Or is this something that's necessary in this moment to nurture a heart set, a mindset, a paradigm within our leaders, within the people who are making the laws and are helping to shape those cities, even the citizens, a paradigm of regenerative, participatory, and evolving urban systems. So I'm going to invite each of those who are here today, just to introduce yourself to each other more meaningfully. We'll take a few moments to do that. We've got 2 hours together. Kim, I'm so happy to see you here today. I haven't seen you in a while. Lots of love. Michelle, I see you're from Ireland, Cork. I don't think I've met you before, but welcome. Rislan, thank you so much for being here. We look forward to really hearing a bit more about, what you're doing in your part of the world and how you're contributing. Sue, you too, amazing. Shanaz, really great to have you here. I hope you did enjoy your Eid yesterday. Happy Eid to you. And then we've got Comfort here. Comfort, I have also not met you, but really great to see you here today. And I hope, I know we're going to have a really great conversation. I'm just checking to see if anyone else is here that's meant to be in this conversation. If any one of you listening right now want to be part of the conversation, please, would you, just open up your screen so that we can see you, or just let us know you're here, and then we'd love for you to contribute. So let's start going. Peter, sorry, Paul, Peter. Thanks, Peter. Hey, Jean-Paul, good to see you. Now I'm going to start with Kim there in the corner, and maybe just introduce yourself, who you are, what is the pieces you're holding right now, and then let's begin this conversation. Kim.
Well, I'm just so happy to see people I haven't seen in a while. I'm holding that. So thank you. Been part of this from the beginning this time, this 24 hours. And what I'm holding, the vision that you're painting, Fariel, yes, like just yes to all of that. During the last few hours here today, it's just been kind of a setting in and just letting the ideas, go where they go. And I feel like we don't, when we get really busy and, with our work, we don't have or take or make the time for that reflection. So what you also said about how Connectathon started to pause and come together, it's a place where the new can come in. So I'm really very much in listening mode, and just appreciate what you've shared already about reflection and where we go and decisions we make, and leaders of cities, leaders of anywhere. Definitely is continuing on from a theme that's been in the Connectathon this time already. So thank you.
Beautiful. Sue, I invite you to introduce yourself more meaningfully.
Thank you. I don't know if you can hear me. I put my computer on for the first time in 3 weeks, and I'm struggling with all the dials.
We can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the notification, which I opened this morning. I'm one of the co-founders of Living Cities Earth, and work closely with Fariel and with Kim. Yeah, the cities as a living entity, we know they are living entities, but it's the quality of that aliveness that has been very much at the heart of the work that I'm doing. And I'm really pleased to be here. I was fortunate enough to be invited last year, April last year, to revise the Charter for Compassion 2.0, which was originally written in 2009. And that renewed iteration was based very much on the work of Living Cities Earth, and with the People Circle, with Kim also became involved. So I sense very much that whilst the cities are alive, it's the quality of the care that we're seeking to really bring forward as a conversation. How do we care for each other? How do we care for ourselves, each other, the place that we live in, and Mother Earth, and the other way as well? So that interconnectivity. So thank you, Fariel, for inviting us all in today.
I'm really happy that you're here, Sue. Now, next I will ask Ruslan. Would you share a little bit? Just introduce yourself more meaningfully.
Yes, hello, my name is Ruslan. I'm a co-founder of LC, and the chairman of board of Meritera Initiative, and we just now testing the platform, which is called Meritera, and it is based on in-house developed social technology Meritonomics, which puts the social capital in the base of everything. And we have our approach to how to estimate and how to digitalize the social impact. And actually, we to digitalize the social capital, we invented even the new scientific dimension, which called meritonomy. It's the science about the social energy, how it is raised, how it is transformed to the social impact, how the social impact transforms to the social capital, and how the social capital provides the opportunity to influence, and how it is converted to the power or to the resources. And actually, we created the platform where you create the image of future, the vision of future, and you can create the community who is sharing the same values and ideas of future, and then you can create the project inside the platform. And we have the special currency, the game, like inside the platform, we call it merit, because all the things, all the social merit, all the social energy is digitalized and calculated in merits. And so the merits inside the platform you can earn by doing some impactful projects. And then we have the social capital, social investment stock exchange, social investment exchange inside the platform, where all the good deeds are compared with each other and people vote, and you receive your social capital, then you use it for any transaction, for taking decisions, etc. So I think it's a long story, and we talk with people. We need some special event to talk about all of this. There is an AI tools inside and many other things. It's actually new approach for how the world can run. And the answer for the question, is the city is a lab? I'm sure that it is. And actually, this is the instrument how to make the city the living lab. It comes from my project, which was called Lab for the Social Innovation. And this approach is actually the main approach that we use to do all the social technologies and all the projects.
So thank you very much, Ruslan, for sharing. Now, we'd like to unpack a little bit. We're going to unpack a little bit more of that as we speak, because I think as the questions come, you'll probably see where, you can share a bit more. But as Ruslan said, hopefully out of today, for many of the technologies that we're going to discuss here, we're going to create a time where you can invite your communities to come and listen in to see more deeper information about how this is possible. Yeah, and what you can actually do with it in cities, right? Because as Ruslan said, it's a bit of a longer story. So thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing more though today. And with that, I'm going to ask Peter Anderson, because Peter, you're working on something very similar to Ruslan, which I think is going to be very complementary to what Ruslan's working on. So Peter, please go for it.
Yeah, well, I think we all sort of dream about the potential of human species, and lots of people have written about that, about how we can become some sort of coherent species on the planet and stewards of the planet, rather than obsessed with extraction. Obviously, we need to. It's a basic equation, right? We need to make regeneration exceed extraction, otherwise we go extinct. And currently extraction is massively winning. So what are we going to do to massively ramp up our ability to regenerate the planet? To do that, there needs to be, I believe, some level of civic infrastructure to enable mass coordination globally around all the things that already exist, all the amazing projects that already exist. To that point, your living labs. The cities are already living labs. So already amazing case studies of improving air quality, water quality, soil quality, biodiversity, social capital. These case studies already exist, but we have yet to create an infrastructure where we can successfully discover, adapt, and replicate them at scale globally. So I believe that we should be coming together cooperatively to build that civic infrastructure, because no one's going to build it for us. And there's obviously not necessarily the commercial gains, and it speaks a different language to the commercial. So that's the big opportunity. I think if we want to realize this opportunity of the human potential, then we need to build new tools that will bring about the new culture. I don't think the new culture we want to see, or our dreams or aspirations or visions, will come to light unless we build the tools that will bring about that. So that's where I'm coming from. And thanks for the invitation to be here today.
Thank you, Peter. I'm really happy you're here today to share. Peter and I have been working together on seeing how we bring some of that technology also to the world. And with that, I want to ask Shanaz why, because Shanaz, I'm glad you're here listening today to what they're just sharing, because I think you're what helps us implement it on the ground. So please introduce yourself more meaningfully. Thank you very much. Thanks, Shanaz.
Thank you, Ferial, and hello to new colleagues and friends. Thank you for the work that you are doing in the world. I'm new to this space and loving, being here with you. A little bit more meaningfully about myself. I have the privilege to serve in our capital city in South Africa, the Metropolitan Municipality. We are called the City of Tshwane, like the City of Cape Town, your cities that you live in. I work for the Metropolitan local government. And my role there is we've got an academy. It's called the Tshwane Leadership and Management Academy, and I head up that. And I've been an urbanist for many, many decades, and I've served on a policy think tank and a not-for-profit for the past 20 odd years called the Isandla Institute. And we had a very deliberate urbanist agenda looking at government policy. And I've been working in the housing, human settlement reframing about saying, how do we make people, citizens, have the right to the city so that cities don't become exclusive spaces? And I'm just popping something for you in the chat, which is exactly a copy of our problem statement that we've developed, created about 6-7 years ago when I started in the city, to say developing a theory of change and how we're using learning and development as a very strategic, very surgical almost way of getting an organization to wake up to itself, to say, if we claim to be at the nexus of making the city work beyond political slogans, what would that mean? How do we understand from a rapid urbanization point of view, what is the work of the city? So that it's not about politicians coming and going and senior officials holding roles, but what happens in cities? What are the aspirations, the dreams? And looking at a very complex reality of South Africa as one of the most unequal cities in the world. What is the burden of leadership that brings with for this particular city, right? That we don't just develop long-term plans that's visionary and pie in the sky, but it does not have any credibility. It does not have any legitimacy beyond the political notions. So for me, I believe that cities are places of abundance, opportunity, and hope. And we've got an entire country that's converging in the city that I work in. And I live in Cape Town and I work in Tshwane. So I live between these two cities for the past 3 decades. So cities are places of unmet aspiration. It becomes places of despair and disappointment and precariousness and vulnerability and marginalization. And we've got a youth crisis and we've got a youth opportunity. And it's about how we frame this opportunity and working the crisis within our South African and African context. So that if it's mostly the youth that are marginalized and disenfranchised and locked out of this place of abundance and opportunity, what does that mean for how we design cities, how we bring, connect opportunity? One of our African surgeons a few years ago was at a donor conference, and he said, talent is everywhere, opportunity is not. So how do we connect? How do we make cities places of opportunity for talent in a more meaningful way? So part of this academy's work, just as a last thought for now, we're heading for local government elections later this year. And the politicians have asked, so what is the long-term plan of this academy, right? How does this academy see the future? So we've put the strategy on the table to say we want to reimagine this academy, not just what it used to be, but what it is and need to be more of. And it needs to be a civic academy. We need to bring the civic back to our purpose and the essence of how we serve, how we relate to citizens, and not as this patriarchal government entity delivering services. But how do we rethink what services are required? How do we bring the humanity and the people centricity back to the heart of things? And, putting that on the table and how it was received in the, and having the various consultations, it was as if, no, this is too academic. It feels like a vision, a bridge too far, right? And the notion of civic, during the liberation movement, civic had a particular meaning. And what is, how do we repurpose the notion of civic right now? And it's a sense that there's a lack of visionary understanding and appetite amongst the bureaucrats to say, no, give me a vision that feels easy enough. Don't stretch me too much. And I felt really frustrated with saying, the future demands way more from us. From what we seem to have the bureaucratic capacity to rise to the occasion too, right? And that worries me. That worries me deeply. For the generation of decision makers that's on the seats right now. And if you are still going to occupy that seat for the next 15 years before your natural retirement, because you're not going to go anywhere soon, I'm worried.
Yeah, and then at the same time, then life is so beautiful, right, Shanaz, because it brings people like these here in this room and many, many others that I'm getting to work with. It evolves them because they are that response to exactly the questions that you're asking. And very exciting times, I think, as much as it is challenging, very exciting.
Let me just say one thing in closing, Ferial, you're right. So when you said, and the Global Mayor Forum and enrolling our current city mayor to that, mayors come and go. They sit on their seats for a particular term, right? And we can use their power and proxy and the authority that they bring very, very strategically. And, what happens post their term? How do we get the global stewards academy going, right? So that we're not just limited by political terms. Back to you. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I would respond with that to say to you, well, the Global Mayors Academy, because we sat with exactly the same question that you just raised there. And it is the brand we're using for not one, but many different learning processes. So the one we're actually developing right now, which we'll talk about later, is the City Leaders Program. And that is exactly, it is the four voices of the cities, the voices from business, voices from, governance, voices from health services, voices from education that are coming together, and all the other aspects of development of the city. The one shaping the city, like you said, not only the mayors, because it is not, but it is important to have them in the mix because they have that agency that the others don't have. to bring it all together. So that's it, and their administrations as well. So I think, and Shanaz, just listening to you speaking, I hope the others of you have also been inspired, because we need more Shanazes around the planet. We have some, but we need more of them. And I think that's the reason for asking this question and saying, because we're going to dig into, where does this start? If we agree we need to be these living labs, then how do we get there? And I think the key is through our leaders. So the question would be, where do we start? So that's it. Thank you so much, Shanaz, for your introduction. I'm going to invite Comfort next. Please, Comfort, share with us where you're coming from and what you're busy with right now.
Everyone, I hope everybody is well. I am Comfort Levisi. I am currently the design director at CLK Design Studio. We are an architecture firm based here in Johannesburg, in South Africa. And my work sits mainly at I would call it the intersection of architecture, urban development, project delivery across the housing, healthcare, and large-scale commercial developments. And currently pursuing my master's thesis specifically in looking at urban infrastructure, focusing on the city of Johannesburg as a case study, and how we could potentially repurpose buildings in the CBD that have sort of been abandoned over time due to capital changes and internal sort of urban migration patterns. And you have a lot of structures in Johannesburg CBD which have been abandoned, have contributed to city decay, urban decay. And how do we bring those back and sort of re-engineer cities to spaces where people want to live and spaces where people want to occupy? Quite excited. I've actually only learned about these talks early this morning, and I'm quite excited to hear the discussions taking place. I must say, for me, when I saw the question around, can cities become living labs, my first thought was, they already are living labs. And I think the problem is they are unintentionally so.
Yes.
And how do we create, intentionality behind how we look at cities? And I really think as architects, as designers, we play a significant role in how we can synthesize the different ideas, the different intersections of technology, policy, positions, and all of that, and produce what I call the built environment. Because cities are built environments. Yes, they have all these different invisible layers, such as policy, such as human migration, economics, that play a role into how you experience these spaces. But ultimately, they manifest themselves in a physical reality. And I think to a large extent, as architects, or architecture has a significant role to play in how people experience that reality. Sue mentioned something which I found really profound, which was, how do we bring back the quality of care, right? And I think in South Africa, we refer to that as Ubuntu, where you prioritize the human experience and really thinking about the quality of life for people. From an African context, a lot of cities were designed, from a particular narrative, which I think we're now looking more forward at a more inclusive, more integrated future reality. And I think there's lots to be said about what's happening, and I'm quite excited to be part of this discussion.
Amazing. And I'm excited for you to be part of this discussion, because we need to come at this from all the different angles, because what we then live into is an expression of who we are, right? So if we're changing, then everything that is an extension of who we are needs to meet that change. So thank you so much, Comfort. I also want to say that we need more Comforts. Like I said, we need more Shanazes. We need more Comforts. I think we need more all of these disciplines, imagining how we come together. And truly, I think there's the deep desire in many humans. I think the question is how, because you feel so alone trying to do this. And that's what the Connect-a-thon has always been about, is bringing us together to say, you're not alone, because you're not. And so right now you'll see I changed my name there. I put Cape Town, because right now I'm actually coming to you from Cape Town. I usually live in Scotland, but I'm in Cape Town right now because that's where I'm originally from. And so we're actually here wanting to work with the city of Cape Town and with Shanaz and Tshwane and a number of others. We're working with McGregor, little towns, because we're saying, hey, South Africa, I think you could be something that the world could look up as an example of some aspects. And, you know, South Africa isn't somewhere where people are expecting something actually great from. But that's why we can change that narrative and say, actually, we can, because I think we do have Ubuntu. And to have Ubuntu, we also need to have Sawubona, which means I see you. Right? So that said, I'm going to ask Michael to introduce himself because he's going to be very excited to respond to that built environment and what you're doing there, because you're going to want to have some talks with him later, Comfort. As Michael's been working for many, many years, you see, he's got a big, long beard already. That's how long he's been working on it. So, Michael, please, introduce yourself meaningfully. Are you able to unmute, Michael? Oh, we're not able to hear you. You are beautiful, as my friend Alexander would say. Yes. Michael, we cannot hear you.
Got it.
There we go.
I'm
You
on
found
a
the button.
Spanish computer, and the whole screen suddenly went sideways. It's trying to get back to Spain. I've come in late to this conversation because the signal at home crashed mid-speech last night, and it hasn't come back again. So I drove frantically to try and be with you, and I'm half an hour late. I've no idea what you've been talking about or what the subject is, but I did train as an architect, and in terms of what Comfort was just saying, I just have a great love for the quality of built environment. And this to me means small communities. It's intimate in every sense of the way that we respond to it. So when I studied architecture, I went to Rome and I just sat there for a week. I went to Paris, and 7 or 8 occasions, I suddenly realized that London, where I was studying, was closer to Paris than it was to Wales, where I lived. So I went 5 times the first year that I was in London and just sat. I sat in Place des Vosges, which was the first piazza square in Europe, probably anywhere in the world, and just sat in the arcades and sketched. So that sort of, you know, what is real life, and does architecture respond to that? Or do we, you know, one of the great conundrums in architecture, do we have the buildings that we deserve, or do we deserve the, you know, which comes first? Which is the chicken and the egg? And how do we get behind that to determine? And I think one of the great things behind this kind of conversation is the very root of the word architecture. Archi of the heaven, ore of the earth, tecton, our ability to build. So it means to build heaven on earth. Now, how many architects are doing this? How many architects understand? It was Keith Critchlow who taught me this. And he did a beautiful movie of Chartres Cathedral and how it came about and how its geometry works and so forth, without a single word. He just used the visual medium to express the beauty of that building and the way that you dance through the light in that building. He designed a multicultural religious center for everyone to worship in one space and so forth. And he's done a treatise on the geometry in flowers, how pattern works and so forth. So I come to these kinds of conversations about what is city, what is urban living, what is our interactive space from those kinds of qualities. What have we been doing for thousands of years that is still right? You know, so that the colonnades in an old city are lovely places to be because the proportions are right, the scale is right. And then you get people like Albert Speer coming along, making the biggest square that you can in the world. You can't see the people on the other side, you don't relate. Whereas you go to St. Mark's in Venice and you do. So the scale is everything to me, which means that I would like to start with the smallest cities in the world. And this is why Ferry and I began a conversation about St. David's in Wales, because the whole community is 1,500 people. The city itself is about 400. And it's like the scale at which you know who you're with and who you're dealing with. So as I said before, I've come late into this conversation. I have no idea what it's about. I won't say any more, but I just I love the beauty, the joy that Connectathon brings, that we meet people who want to use spirit to create in form. And it's like, how do we express from our hearts to engender a world that is just going to be joyous for everybody, in harmony with Mother Nature, not abusing resources and so forth, but doing it within. And this is one of the great questions I have about cities. They are over-resource consumptive. And how do we get back to, so when the harvest failed in Russia decades ago, everything that was eaten in Moscow was grown in Moscow. What kind of level of relationship can we build into future design where everybody's involved in that design process? It's as collective as our financial system and our agricultural system, architecture. So where architecture is building heaven on earth once again. Enough for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for that contribution. And you've really set the stage very beautifully for what the conversation has been about. It's been about, can cities become living labs? Should they? And if yes, why? Right? So we talked about the fact that, billions of people are going to be or are already living in cities and will continue to do so. And that amount will grow. They estimate by 2050, 68% of humanity. So, and it's possibly more than that. That's just the estimated amount. So the question is exactly what you said. How do we design differently? And I think Peter, Michael, when I left him message last night saying, come join this conversation, he says, who's Peter? So there's Peter Anderson right there on the screen for you. And again, Peter once I've been asking, or Peter's been asking me, can we use St. David's as a living lab site? Yes. So I said, yes, let's talk to Michael. So Michael, we need to have that conversation between you and Peter. Because it is that moment. It's that moment where we start to move. So that's what this conversation is also hoping to do. Move from just talking about it, which I'm not opposed to, but there's a moment to move things into practice. And yes, we're not going to get it right. Let's just be clear about it, because that's what practice means, right? We're going to keep doing it better and better and better. But you have to actually put it in practice to know that something is not working so that you can keep reimagining. It's called evolution. So it's exciting times. And I'm glad, Alex, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Alex is on our team for the Global Mayors Academy, particularly working on the City Leaders Program. He's our marketing guru, but also very much an integral thinker. So thank you so much, Alex, for joining us. I'd also like to give an opportunity to Michelle and then Jean-Paul and then Alex, right? To just very quickly tell us a little bit more about how you're coming into this conversation, from which aspect. Introduce yourself a little bit more meaningful. So Michelle, please introduce yourself.
Hiya. Short sentences are not my forte, so please give me a verbal kick under the table. Yeah, so I suppose I'm probably the least valid in being here, in that I am a 41-year-old undergrad, which is an experience all in itself. The course I'm studying is development studies, so we're looking at international development, but that comes into the local. I'm a dyslexic learner, so I love my course in that it's so broad and it's really aiming towards that kind of interconnectivity. And also, because I'm in Ireland, our university in UCC, our European Alliance is called UNIQUE, and it's 10 cities in post-industrial transition. Which Ireland actually has a really interesting part with that, because we kind of skipped the classical industrialization. We kind of went more from agriculture to services. And when we're looking at development in the context of, in Africa in particular, I was looking at some of the policies for 2040 or 2050 from Uganda, and it's very much kind of similar, and it's really excited. It's the same with Kenya and stuff, just seeing this like when you skip the industrialization and when you're building with the knowledge that we have now and all of the mistakes that have been made so far, it's a really exciting place. Also in terms of my city, like I where I'm currently living now was it was the first social housing. It was built in the 1920s, and you can tell because there's no green space. Everything is very, very close together. It was never built with cars in mind. And before that, we lived in a place that was built in the 70s for the overspill from that area, where obviously 50 years in architecture, a lot of lessons have been learned. So there's a lot more green spaces built into it, and both have very, very strong sense of communities, and there's high like social capital. But there's a very different feel, and I suppose I'm looking more at how it feels in the body to live in those different spaces and how that's kind of influenced in the community. Um, so yeah, that's I'm probably
So,
coming at this from a very like all over the place angle. But it's
no, no,
really
no.
exciting to hear.
Michelle, I'd like to say you're exactly the voices we need in here, because that's the point. It isn't about all the intellectual human beings. So I have a big pet peeve with this, by the way, the language we use, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, keep it, because the thing is, the intellectuals have been having conversations and they've not moved anything on. Why? Because it remains intellectual knowledge. It needs to be embodied knowledge. It needs to get into the cities, to the people, to the ones who can make the difference on the ground. So yes, I want you in this conversation, Michelle, and I want to say invite 100 more, 1,000 more, because when will the world begin to talk? This is the point. It's exciting because we're actually communicating with one another. I mean, Comfort has just found out more about Ireland, and possibly, wow, I could go take some of my wisdom over there, right? Because that's the thing. And my colleague, so she's not here today. She was hosting this conversation with me initially, Patty Pampoulis in South Africa. And Patty, this is the thing she's been saying. She's saying, hey, why are we not having more human beings? Because they feel exactly like you just did, Michelle. I'm not qualified. What makes you qualified or not qualified? The fact that you're a human and you're breathing and you're living in a city, you're qualified as much as I am, or as little as I am. So that's it. Thank you for sharing. And yes, please never, ever again feel like you don't have the agency. Just take it, even if nobody is willing to give it to you. That's what I did. Say, there we go. And what I'd like to do is also quickly just ask Paul and then Alex. Please, Paul, share, Jean-Paul, my apologies. Jean-Paul, just introduce yourselves to us.
Yeah, thank you, Varial. I received your message this morning, so I was quite enthusiastic about reconnecting again. Because I remember a couple of days ago, I was seeing the Connectathon message of 2023 and where we joined, and it was very nice to see that again. Also, relating to the fact that you just mentioned human being, I like to see myself as a biological human being, not a robot in a financial system. And as a biological human being, as you said, we breathe. I breathe 20,000 times per day, just like yourselves. We don't tend to realize that. But if we breathe 20,000 times every day and we pollute that air that we breathe, we pollute ourselves. And then we become sick. It has consequences and everything. And if you look at a city as a conglomerate of human beings that are all breathing, then we do have something that is not political, that is not translatable in money, and it has to be translated in responsibility. And that responsibility about human beings being human has a set of core values that connect us with our natural environment. And taking that responsibility together with the local government, together with the local business people, together with the local citizens, together with education, that responsibility I called sustainocracy. I created sustainocracy as a society model, a contextual society model, which is not financial growth. It's not about politics. It's about that shared responsibility. And for the last 30 years, I've been here locally in the Netherlands, inviting all these different pillars, what I call the four legs to the table, to bring them to my table of being human. We're all human beings. And all these people sitting at those seats, they're all human beings. They all breathe there 20,000 times, but they don't realize it. So then I asked them and myself to take that responsibility together. And then you get a total change of the way the city functions, because suddenly we are looking at how do we deal with mobility? How do we deal with industries? How do we deal with our food supplies? How do we deal with all the things that are related to us as a human being? And as you say, okay, is it a living lab? The first thing that we have to see in a city is to define the context in which we place the city. If the city is human-centered from this core human values point of view, you get a totally different story than when we talk about economic growth. And then you suddenly get this industrial type of city complexes or logistics complexes and those kind of things. I'm trying to define cities from a health point of view and develop cities together with the people themselves taking that same responsibility, and you get an ecosystem. But it's extremely difficult because we are very used to being dependent on the political structure and voting every time, and being dependent on the money system and not creating our own food system, because we have disconnected, in cities specifically, disconnected ourselves totally from our natural environment. The only way we get access to the things that we directly need as a human being, food, breathing, and everything is through a monetary system. So we really have to connect ourselves again, also as city, back with our natural environment, and try to connect really with those core values that we really have for ourselves. So that is the thing that I'm trying to do. And I'm publishing this worldwide, all the experiences I have, the positive and negative ones and everything. But I see there is a movement going on, and a movement which is also reflected in this community here, that we are willing to look at ourselves as a human being and a natural human being, and willing to actually take that responsibility.
So Jean-Paul, I'd really like to invite you beyond this to start maybe having a conversation with some of us and connecting that work into the City Leaders program we're developing right now. Because I think the bottom line for me is we've got to work together. There's just no way any one of us or any one group of us is going to do this work. It is a work that is asking humanity to rise together. Right. And so this is just my job. I'm just the crier continually saying, come on, come on, come on, come on, because I just think that that's the only way this is going to happen.
But working together has to have a context. It has to have a positive invitation. If you have that positive invitation and you can bring the people, as somebody said already during this meeting here, it has to be very localized, because you can look each other in the eyes and you can actually take that responsibility together, and then we can connect worldwide. And then start comparing what did we do in Cape Town, what do we do in Eindhoven here, what do we do in Spain or in South Africa or wherever in the world. How did we manage to get this thing going from a health perspective, an air quality perspective, a food resilience perspective, water resilience perspective, all these kind of things that we did together. But we have to create those examples on a local for local scale.
Beautiful, Jean-Paul. And so I don't want to spend all the time here talking about the City Leaders program, because that, I think what we probably do is invite you to a next step where we actually just share about that, because we only one group working on one aspect of this, right? But it is connecting the dots. It is who is building the parts that really make this work for us all together. But yes, there's a lot already running on the ground. When I go to the different places around the world, I'm seeing it. People are doing amazing stuff already. We're just not having the mechanisms to share it yet as effectively, I think, as we possibly can, particularly given the fact that we have technology now that allows us to do that. Now Peter said it earlier, how do we actually use it? How do we put that together? So that said, Alex, would you just take 1 minute, please? Because I'd like to start moving the conversation on. We're heading to the top of the hour already, so we're going to have to take a little break. Well, if those of you that are feeling in the conversation, hey, we'd like to just continue, then we don't take a break. But if you want to take a 5 minute or so break, then we'll head back in and work through some of those questions that I'd like for the panel members to actually respond to. So Alex, please introduce yourself a little bit more meaningfully.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Alex. and I'm happy to be here. I'm a part of Global Mayors Academy team. And actually, I'm just exploring this format and see a lot of different and beautiful people here. And pass it to the next person, next part of the conversation.
Thank you. Kuta, you take 1 minute too. Just very quickly introduce yourself to us, and then we're going to see if we're going to take a break or continue. Thank you, Kuta.
Thank you. My name is Mafa Cornelius Kuta. I'm a farmer in Cameroon. I'm based in Yaoundé. I'm the founder of One Organic Cameroon Development Association. Thanks for this opportunity and every person's presence here. Thank you.
Beautiful. So in the morning, I didn't even think that many would respond because it was such last minute. I'm sitting in the car on the way. My partner's driving to the airport because I'm dropping him off at the airport. And then I'm inviting, and here you all are. So it just shows you should never be preempting. And this is the thing about life. So I want to come back to that life. We had a meeting the other day, myself and Patty, with some other folk that were getting involved with what we're doing. And one person was being very technical about things. Now, I'm not saying this is not important, but there's the other aspect, because that's the left brain, right? There's the other aspect of, could we in this moment also really just trust life? I believe life is very intelligent. And it brings parts and things from Cameroon to Cape Town, from Cleveland to what have we got here, Russia, and the UK and wherever, right? It's bringing parts together that seeming that might on the surface seem eclectic. But life knows what it is doing. Can we lean in? So that's my invitation to you here as well. And I think the invitation every time I meet with groups of people, can we lean in? And ask ourselves what wants to emerge here in this space between us. So by show of hands, do we need a break right now? Or do we, for 5 minutes? Or do we want to continue this conversation? So
let's continue.
Okay, I'm happy to
continue. Let's continue.
It's getting hot now, right? Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to do a little popcorn style, because I can't give all the panel members at the moment, given our time. We've got an hour left to answer, to respond to every question. So also my invitation to you is try to respond to, if you've got something to say about that as quick as possible, almost as, how can I say, succinct, not necessarily quick, but deliver it fast, right? So that we can give more of us space to be joining in. And so my first question really that I wanted to ask to us here to consider is, it's about reframing the city, right? I'd like to begin by grounding us in the core question behind this session, right? So when we speak about cities becoming living labs, what do we actually mean by that? Because for me, this goes far beyond pilot projects, innovation hubs, infrastructure. So I'd love for us to, to just sit with the question of, from all of your experience, right? So talk from experience, not just from something that's head knowledge, right? Because it's really important that we draw from this now. So it doesn't mean that everybody has to contribute, but if you have got experience around what we're talking about, then bring that in, because we want to learn from you. So working within cities, with leaders, with systems. Now, some of you have already started alluding to a lot of those things, but let's just bring it into a very specific structured response, which is, what are the shifts in mindsets, in heart sets, identity, governance that are truly required for a city to become a living, learning lab, right? Because someone said it, I think it was Comfort, it's already happening. But how do we make that, bring in that intentionality in a much, much greater way than we have before? And perhaps, it's also important to say that, why are these shifts, the ones that you're going to be talking about now, necessary? So if we've got that question, then start raising hands, right? If you've got something to respond to that question.
I can start if you don't mind.
Please do. And then we've got Jacoby, I think. So put up your virtual hand so that I can see them, and then I'm going to call you out, right? So who said they want to start?
Ruslan, I start.
Ruslan, please.
Sorry. You see that I think that we have to reconsider the purpose of the society itself, because before it was to survive, to protect property, is it so? And so we answer the question that it's not. Because actually the purpose of the society on this stage is to provide the opportunity for the evolution of consciousness, for the evolution of spiritual aspects of the human being. And if we are looking from this point to the whole, for the whole city infrastructure and purpose, etc., and processes, we have to answer the question, whose laboratory is this? Because are we an object inside this laboratory, or we have agency? And my answer is that the answer is obvious, yeah, that we want to have an agency, that it's not only mayor or some political or financial groups who are experimenting in this place, in this space, and people are just objects. I think this is the main problem. And the problem is that when we are trying to estimate the impact through the economical aspects, I think we are going the wrong way. I think that the main impact is how our actions influence to the other people. When I did something, what is the consequences of this action in the people's mind, and then their actions, because conscience goes first. And looking through this perspective to the laboratory, to the city as the laboratory, we developed the technology which provides the power to the city members, to the citizens, to influence the society and all the processes through the impact. So the main idea of meritonymy is that your impact can be calculated in the special currency. We call it, it's not currency, I don't know how to say it, points, we call it merits. And these merits you receive while you are doing something good for the society, and you receive the reaction, because the speciality and the difference from the financial capital and the social capital as the base of the social capital is the values of the community. And the only way to see how the community reacts on some actions is to ask people, because only one person, before Elon Musk put this Neuralink in our mind, before that this crazy future happened, the only answer is how people react to it, that they can say it. And our platform that we develop, and actually the Meritary Initiative has the main goal is to shift our understanding of the social process in a way that money and the power, they are the resources, but they are instruments. But the real influence, the real power is supposed to be growing from your impact, from your social responsibility. And responsibility is pretty much related to the power. So if you have only responsibility and you cannot influence on the process, it's crazy, yeah. And the same things vice versa. If you have if you have power but you don't have responsibility, this is the problem, yeah. And so the Meritary Initiative is we are looking at the social capital not as an abstract theoretical academic thing or some combination of social links, etc. We are looking at the social capital as the probably new asset. So we don't have the infrastructure for social capital. We have the infrastructure physical, yeah, like roads, etc. We have the infrastructure for information, internet, etc. We have the financial infrastructure, but we don't have the infrastructure for social capital. That's what we are building.
Beautiful.
And the social capital arises from you are doing something good, people react, you receive merits, then these merits inside the system, they are like super system over money and votes. So they have at the same time two functionality.
Yeah.
And we have the experiment in one territory of 30,000 people, and within 1.5 years, using what we call the economy of merits, this meritonomical approach, we received the results that from 1% of volunteership in the territory, it raised up to 51%. I think it's kind of we could receive a Guinness Prize if they would follow our experiment. Yeah, but then we saw that if you rebuild the process in the meritonomical way, it raises the activity of population. The people understand what's the meaning of the input and impact. Because when you do something, you receive the power and you can influence, you can take decisions, what will be happening on this territory.
Mm.
So this is in towards you have to stop me because I can speak about it for like hours. I wrote the book.
We want to hear more of it.
I wrote the book actually, and I think I will have the presentation of platform, and it's a very deep, scientifically based project. And also we have a lot of experience in real action with the real communities, real processes, real governments, etc.
So, Ruslan, I'd actually love just what you've just said there. I'd love to have maybe something where we bring a bunch of us together and we actually really input the things that we're busy working on together into, for example, something like, I mean, we've already started talking to you, so we know that it's going to be part of what we do in the City Leaders program and offering to city leaders to activate what they're doing. So, because we're not interested in bringing theory anymore. Theory is important, but we're interested to take that theory and see how is that going to work inside of an actual, in a particular context. Because all contexts are different. It has different dynamics, different cultural settings, different, so we need to understand how that works on the ground. Right? So Shanaz, I'm hoping you're listening. Right?
Please let me think one thing in accordance with what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
I can show you how it works, because actually if we see that we have only 100% of power inside the community or the city, and 100% of resources. So if we have inside the system, people works, do good deeds, I don't know, any projects, people votes, so we have these merits on our accounts. So 100% of merits is equal to 100% of power and 100% of resources.
Mm-hmm.
So everything inside this society depends on your impact.
Yeah.
And then we have this social capital as digitalized currency, which is like a new asset that you can move, you can take the decisions, and at the same time, you can spread funds, you can take the decisions where the money of the, I don't know, administration of the city will go, etc. So it's a totally self-governed approach.
Thank you so much. We've had some hands up, so I can say more about that, but I'm going to give some time to Jacoby. Is that how I say it? Jacoby? How do I say that? Just repeat that. Sorry.
Jacobs.
Oh,
Jerome.
So please, Jacobs, tell us a little bit more about what you'd like to add here.
Yeah, so what I would like to add to answer that question is cleanliness. Cleanliness is the answer. I'm from Cape Town as well. When I moved to Joburg, one of the things that shocked me to the core was how filthy the city of Joburg is. I, in fact, thought there was a tornado that hit until the next day I went, and the next day, and I realized, okay, there's no tornado. It is how it is. If you visit cities like Rwanda, for example, not just the city, but the country of Rwanda, you will not find a piece of paper on the ground. So there's a level of cleanliness. When people are that clean, the place becomes safe. There's a translation to safety. So environmental cleanliness that leads to safety. And it's not so much about affluence and poverty. It is about an attitude of a leader. If you look at leaders like Deng Xiaoping of China that moved 800 million people out of poverty, and President Lee IQ of Singapore, same thing. And how clean those spaces are, you know, the modern China, Singapore of that day and today, Rwanda. So it's not just spaces out there, it's possible even in South Africa. And I think just the attitude of leaders being intentional about environmental cleanliness and that leading to safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. So interesting. As I was driving with my partner in Cape Town, I noticed very similar things. And actually, some of the spaces we went through to a place called Robertson yesterday, and it was so beautiful. There was not one paper. And I noted it. So again, it's interesting to see perhaps what that correlation is there. Comfort, you wanted to contribute. And then we have Michelle that put up her hand. So Comfort, please. And welcome, Alexander. Lovely to see you.
Yes,
Comfort.
yes, hi. I think it's a really interesting question. From my perspective and my experience, I think there are three things that are required for us to start creating cities as living labs, right? I think the first is we need real projects. So in my experience, you know, every project that we work on, every hospital, every clinic, every house, every residential building is in and of itself a type of experiment. And from that, there are lessons to be learned that then could translate into knowledge that you can use to apply in different contexts. So for me is one, you want to have real projects, real, you know, activity happening within cities. Then the part that often gets missing is the second aspect, which is the feedback loop. So where every single time we start projects in cities, we always start from scratch. There's no feedback loop about what have we learned from previous projects that we can carry forward into new projects. And you see this in how we develop policy, right? Policies and building regulations can come out of tragedy or, you know, incidents that take place. And then we realize, oh, we should have learned from that. Let's change the policy. But oftentimes it takes decades before policy translates into real world impact, right? And then I'd say the last aspect is then like decision-making power, right? Who holds the power to decide what gets implemented or not? How do we structure societies to function in that manner? And I think I like the meritonomics concept that Ruslan is talking about. I think it could be a potential answer to that question, but my concern there is like, does that not create a social scoring paradigm where, you know, based on your social credit, you become less of a human versus other humans that have more social value, so to speak. So it's like, is there no risk there that we can start to create more of the same of what we've seen and how humans have had a desire? And I think I saw it somewhere in the comments where human beings have this desire to want to hog power, to want to control, to want to be in charge of others. And, you know, there's sort of this, I want to call it conflict, where something can be seen as the more good you do, the more valuable you become to society. But that very same system that's created for good has an innate potential of becoming the very fundamental basis of societal control and the very things that we're trying to sort of move away from. I don't have an answer to that, only a concern per se, but I do think that in order for us to say, you know, we're creating these living labs in a sense, one, we have to bring it down to the human scale, but secondly, it has to be, like you said earlier, it has to come down to reality. And in my experience, if nothing is being built, then it's all just conceptual. Right? We need to be in the habit of building stuff and testing it and saying, after we've built it, did it work? What didn't work? What can we do better? And that's the only way that we can continuously improve and see cities evolve, because, you know, cities are not white papers and, you know, documents on a page. They exist, again, in a real environment. They're made of concrete and materials, and we need to start thinking, I think, in that sense. How do we start thinking regeneratively? about materials so that we can have the opportunity to iterate and build cities that are long lasting, but also, I want to say, environmentally aware of people's needs and also those considerations.
Beautiful. And I think you raised a very important thing, Comfort, about, we could be implementing things that iterate the same as what we've done before with different paint on it, right? Now, is it about those actual solutions, or is there something, so I'm wanting to dig a little bit deeper here. Is there something else that informs? So is it got anything to do with what Ruslan wants to implement, or Peter, or anyone? But is there something else that informs how we would respond to those new ways of doing things? What else needs to be there? So I want to give an answer, but I don't want to. I'm hoping that some of you will help me out. So Michelle, you had your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, actually a lot of what I wanted to say is what Comfort just said. And I suppose just to, because we're really lucky in Ireland because there's a very, very strong civil society. And we have, in my city, there's massive funding put into the arts and the storying and, but amongst that, like I just and I don't believe it's our baseline nature as humans, but I do feel with the systems that we've been involved in for so long, it doesn't matter what you use to track, it's currency. And it will be used as that, and it means power. And I find even like there's gatekeeping to doing good as well, which I find absolutely hilarious. And like if you go into any kind of space and it's kind of, oh well, we need someone to do this. If someone puts up their hand, but it's not the person's looking for, like that will be quietly ignored. And like it's that kind of again, it's this like scarcity, this like we have to cling and we have to keep the familiar and the social structures and stuff. But what I found is because the part of the city, like I've lived here, but I've also lived in other places. And I have a real love for the space and I have a real love for the community there. But it's one of the places that would be very stigmatized in our city. And what we're seeing now is like with this kind of right wing stuff, a lot of the people there are the people who are being radicalized. And these are really good people who, like, if someone from a different culture fell in the middle of the street, they would be the first people over to help them up. And I mean, it's not quite like in South Africa. There's not like, people standing out hospitals saying, unplug them and get them out. I think there was a newspaper quote I saw about maybe 2 years ago. But it's the same kind of sense that's there. And like I came across the Packham tools. Like they've been on the go since the 90s and I see them everywhere now. Like we had a talk from a project in Rwanda that was working with farmers and on the community mapping. And I think there's so much power in that, but also you need to look at who's been excluded for a long time or who is not listened to, because like for the area of the city I'm in, as with any kind of disadvantaged, and in that I say in a very Irish sense, as in like very privileged, but in relation to other parts of the city would be disadvantaged. People will always organize and people will always self-organize. And I find now that I'm in university, I see all these massive incentives for entrepreneurship and all this, the creative thinking. I'm like, there are like 10-year-olds coming around and they've fixed up someone's broken lawnmower and they're cutting the grass, and that energy is being totally missed out on. But also if you ask people, or like even me, like I mean my grandmother is from this area and like I moved back here like about 15 years ago. I'm still a blow-in. I'm still kind of like new, and since you go back to college then there's this extra layer of alienation. But like there needs to be trust building as well. And from what I see from a lot of the communities, a lot of like going back to college, I discovered this talk by Marmot and Wilkinson, and it was basically looking at global inequality. And basically what they discovered is that across the world, it doesn't matter how you go about lessening inequality, but when you lessen that inequality, life improves for everyone. As in to like the mechanisms can be very different in different contexts, but it's that moving that gap, it means healthcare systems are less overburdened. There's less crime. There's like even for the people at the top, it still improves. Um, yeah. So I think I was kind of I think I've kind of lost track of what I was saying, but I think I was partly responding to Shanaz, and I think Comfort said a lot of what I wanted to say in response to Ruslan as well. I'm gonna stop talking now. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. So yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing as well is we're saying, yes, we do need to do some of that outward, out building infrastructures and new solutions, because in many cases, like with Ruslan, Peter, and others here, they are building, I want to say technologies that are wanting to come at this very differently. But my challenge here to us is, as we do, because I see this in cities now all the time, the newest cities that are coming up, they're building new environments. But are we focusing at all, or maybe very little? But is there perhaps more that needs to be done on who are we as humans? How are we showing up in that spaces? The thing is, we've been on, I'm seeing your hand, you can go right after me, Alexander, and it's like, we are been on a journey here. There's been lots of inertia. We've been through wars. We've been through a bunch of things as societies across the planet, civilizations even. And, so it doesn't all just go away because we wish it away, or because we learn amazing things and we have all these theories in our head. How do we actually show up? Because again, we talked about coming together as people. And I mean, in my own organization, we have the same, it's no different. We're humans. And some of the humans I work with are extremely conscious human beings. Yet there is still the scratchings and the misunderstandings and the why. And is that going to be any different anywhere else? And what do we do to look at that and to understand how do we address that? Because that's going to influence Ruslan's beautiful piece of technology will be very different in the hands of humans who are different than the humans that are, again, just going to use it as a currency, as a, et cetera, et cetera. Alexander Laszlo, please, I'd love to hear you.
Ferial and friends, thank you so much. Jumping into the flow and the stream here, so rich as this entire Connectathon is being. Thank you for the provocations and the invitations. Identity and belonging. I think this is what you're talking about to a large extent, Ferial, and what others are exploring and expressing. I want to pick up something that Jacob was talking about before in terms of cleanliness and safety and so on. When I was living in Monterrey, Mexico, I'm now living in Buenos Aires, Argentina. But when I was living in Monterrey, Mexico, which is a border state, the Nuevo León is the state, and it's just below Texas in the United States. And so often people would drive across the border and do their shopping in the US and then come back or just go and visit. So those who could would do that. And it was quite noticeable how in the city of Monterrey, which together with Guanajuato, which is a very extended city, and Monterrey is a very industrial city, so it's more compact, but they have more or less the same population size, the second largest cities after Mexico City. So huge cities. And in Monterrey, people would just treat the city more or less like it was a convenient garbage can. So you're walking along and you have your candy wrapper, or you have something, you just toss it on the street. At best, you would toss it on the street and not on the sidewalk if you were taking some care. And when we noticed, when people would go to the United States, everyone would pick up their garbage, would not throw it on the ground, would pick up after somebody else if they saw it. They would be very, very careful. And this is not their country. And it was so interesting how the attitudes changed. And when they came back to their place, they were like, "I don't care. It's okay. We can just toss it on the ground here." But not when they were across the border in the US, in a very equivalent type of city. So that was one thing I wanted to mention. Attitudes in terms of identity and belonging. Again, with this, even though it's my place, this is my city, Monterrey, I don't have to care about. But if I'm a visitor someplace else, yes, then I should be more careful. Interesting. So there's one. Other things is now that I'm here in Buenos Aires, I saw very similar effects also to what Comfort was talking about and others. And Michelle, I think, was also mentioning this. If you happen to, this happened to me once. I confess, I was engaged with my device as I was walking. So I didn't see something and I tripped, right? And I went splat. And everybody rushed over to see if I was okay and to help me up. I was okay. But there was a lot of concern. And people are there to help. And I've always found some people so helpful and so respectful. Here, you try to board the bus and there's a line. Nobody jams the line. And if there's somebody who comes who is pregnant or who is more chronologically sophisticated, I'll say, not old, they would be allowed to board first. So beautiful things like that. But when you get in the car, everybody is not only an idiot, but they're your enemy. And there's the horns, and there's the swear words, and what happens to our identity? It's crazy. And here, pedestrians have no right of way. You start to cross the street, and it's like, be really careful. Be really careful because the cars they have priority. Even though I took my driver's license here, and even though the law is on crosswalks, pedestrians have right of way. Frankly, pedestrians should have right of way all the time. Not here. Crosswalk doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So very different, for example, from San Francisco, California, where you start approaching the curb and you're still 50 meters away, the car will stop because you may have the intention to possibly want to cross that crossing there. So we wait. So then the last thing I'll say just before I pass it back is what I call the ashtray effect. Here in Buenos Aires, people smoke a lot. It's much less so, for example, in San Francisco, where I was living for a while. And so, but here it's it's cool. Not only cool, it's kind of expected. You finish your cigarette, you flick it onto the street. And your environment is your ashtray in that sense. And there's this notion when I was in San Francisco that absolutely, are you kidding? Why would you treat the environment like that? It's not your ashtray, and we don't want to live in that. So again, this identity and belonging, I think those are key aspects of how we relate to ourselves, to each other, and to the place we call home. So thanks for that. And as they say in Clubhouse, I'm Alexander and I'm complete.
Thank you, Alexander. And Michael, you wanted to add something, and then Ruslan.
Okay. Add something or come in at a completely different angle. I'm short of ground rules. So I'm hearing wonderful, inspiring sort of understandings and proposals. I agree with every word that Alexander has just said, and that's why I started building community paths 50 years ago so that children had safe spaces and cars were never allowed on them. It's like all the pieces we noticed, but the ground rules are something completely different. And we've heard, is it Ruslana talk about the 100% resource access to the 100% merit to the 100% power, and Comfort talk about the three things that you need in order to start a new project and so on. But when I mentioned architecture before, Archi of the Heaven, Order of the Earth, Technon, those relate to our three modern requirements. Ethics is the God speak. Ecology is the Mother Earth aspect, the Ore, and Tecton is our human empowerment. Are we thriving because of what we do? And are we applying our responsibility and our resources and so forth? So this is ethics, ecology, and empowerment. That's the three-legged stool on which the future stands. These are ground rules. This is foundational. And if we're going to talk architecture, we have got to have sound foundations. And there is so much going on that is like the biblical building on sand. And if we don't know what these ground rules are, so let's look at them. Ecology says we can live at one with the planet. Well, the planet, you may not know, is 14.9 billion hectares of terrestrial area, of which two-thirds are totally unavailable to human consumption. We live on one. That's 5 billion hectares, and there's 8 billion people, which means you already know you've got less than a hectare, whatever you do. But we're 80% soil depleted, and 90% of that 5 billion hectares is used for agriculture. It's all about food, and it's food very badly produced. We need 1 ton for each person. That's 8 billion people. So if you look at the size of the city that you're contemplating, you've got to have an input of 1 ton per person per annum, and that needs to come from their footprint. Now, the Western footprint, which has consumed this planet, is not what they like to tell you, that we're using up 3 or 4 planets. Every Western city is using 20 acres per annum per person on their revenue account, not their capital account, not the buildings that were built last year. What we're getting through this year is 20 acres per person. Now, in indigenous communities, they're living well within their acre per person allowance. We've got about 1/3 on current soil levels at the moment of an acre per person, and we're living on 20. If we can't understand that as one of the most fundamental issues that determines how urban life is going to be in the future. So you look at London, for instance, with 10 million people in it, its footprint is greater than the size of Britain. That means everybody else in Britain has got nowhere to eat, nowhere to live. Now, if you look at the car culture in America, every car has got 1 acre of tarmac. If you've only got 1 acre each, why did you use yours for tarmac for your car? This is the answer to Alexander's question. You know, it's like the bicycle is the only thing that we've ever known that has been quantified to be more efficient than us. So look at ground rules. In terms of land, we have at the moment 1/3 of an acre. We can soil restore very fast and get back to 1 acre per person, but that's our ground rule. In terms of mechanization and so forth, the ethics says, how do we solve this for 8 billion people? Well, this is by using bicycles, by growing our own food, by finding out. So somebody else said, we need to talk about equality. Well, equality is about knowing what the resource base is for 8 billion people, and it's not the way we're living at the moment. We need to know this, you know? So there are very fundamentals that we need to put on the table and say, that's where we begin. And this is why I said earlier, I'd like to do the smallest city in the world, because that's where you could say there's 600 people, there's 600 acres of access. And from that, they can grow their own trees, build their own houses. We begin to understand what we're dealing with. Extrapolate that to Beijing and you're lost. You're left with empowerment. So we tend to home in on either ethics, ecology, or empowerment. We're either interested in people, or interested in equality, or interested in Mother Earth. And we tend to focus, you've got to do all 3. Every single project that we put forward has got to be ethical, ecological, and empowering. That is the Venn diagram, the 3 interlocking circles. You get 2 of them to work and you get a Vesica Piscis. You need to have all 3 working, and gold sits at the center. We're moving into a time where we're coming from our hearts. We're moving because we want to see empowerment. We're moving into a world where we want to love the resource base that we work with, which means ethics is inevitable. We move to a place where everyone on earth can thrive because each one of us is recognizing our resource base and our responsibility for it and living accordingly. Yeah, that's the point of Connectathon. We're creating all the pieces of the puzzle. We're bringing together ideas from all sorts of different, but if we don't understand the collective integration of ethics, ecology, and empowerment, we used to have economics in there. It was like a one-legged bar stool. It said, I can do it, you're beholden to me. It didn't realize it needed to be bolted to a concrete base or it doesn't work. everybody had to support it. It's a nonsense. Ethics, ecology, empowerment is the three-legged milking stool that says, I can sit anywhere on earth. In Africa, it was 3 sticks bound together with a leather across the top. In the, everywhere on earth, 3 legs works. It's stable. And that's where equality lies. So we need to bring into every conversation a literal, critical understanding that the bicycle is more efficient than us, the car is less efficient, the car is probably a 20-acre tool. It's like, what are we using them for? And if we don't understand the basics that we're dealing with, we can't start building from all these conversations, from the connectathons, from all the organizations that were involved in and so forth. We need the basics, what I've just called the ground rules. It's got grounding requires that we understand what it is that is the basis of everything we do. And fundamentally, that's Mother Earth. Then it's 8 billion people. Then it's let's thrive beyond that. Let's believe, because the future is about believing. It's believing that we're all going to be better off because we've all understood that we're all in this together. Thank you. Sorry, a bit preachy, but...
Thank you, Michael, for sharing. Now, we've got, what is it, 30, well, actually just 20 minutes left, right? So I started this conversation by saying, we don't want to remain in theory. We want to move over into practice. So one of the big things that, Michael's just shared there, he said, you talked about, having more knowledge, really. And I think that there are many leaders right now developing cities, shaping cities, and they don't have the knowledge that Michael was just talking about. I mean, there's some things he's shared that I didn't even know. And I'm pretty sure the rest of us here too. So I want to ask 2 people real quickly. I'd like to ask Sue Cooper, because we talked a little bit, around about, things like, a lot of that kind of work that we need to do needs to start within the leaders themselves, et cetera. Now, Sue, you mentioned that you were working on this charter for compassion for cities and city leaders and people in the city. So I'd like you to talk a bit about that, because I want to say, why is that even important now, as we move forward into, how do we develop the cities of the future as cities that are different to what we have right now, that they are places where the environments provide the nutrients for flourishing as communities. So first thing. Second thing was, I want to ask every one of us, while Sue's answering this question, I want you to start to think about what is your response ability, right? I say it like that because I'm not talking about responsibility. I'm talking about what is it that you're holding? What is it that you're doing right now that contributes to, as we've spoken about, what it should be looking like? Yes, we said cities should be living labs. They already are, but they should be intentional ones, right? And so as Sue answers, you're thinking about this. What is it that I hold? How do I contribute? Someone mentioned leveraging. How do we, what do you hold that the rest of us here can leverage into how we actually start to move forward, to challenge our leaders, to ask them to obtain the education, to, access the education, and is the education even available, things like that. So I want you to think about that. And I want to do a last round where every one of us just takes 2 minutes and just responds to that question. Yeah. Sue.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Ferial. I'm prepared, but not prepared, if you know what I mean. So if I go off on a tangent, please just bring me back. But as a co-founder of Living Cities Earth and the incredible concepts of people from around the world, 120 co-founders, I'm better as a foot soldier rather than a deep thinker. So how could these incredible concepts be grounded in our community of Nottingham? So we set up Living Cities Knots as a framework to deliver some of these concepts. And some people have said, you keep trying again and again, because we kept going down different rabbit holes. Great intentions, but how could this work? And what we realized was that the people who were interested in coming to our meetings were people who are helping other people. So we started with the byline of helping people who are helping people. And we went down the routes of education, inviting people from education who came. But the people who were most interested in this were the people from health. And bit by bit over the 2 years, we met every month. But again and again, it all seemed to revolve around well-being and care. And if you look at this is how I see it. As we look at the 4 letters of care, the C is compassion. Caring for ourselves, each other, our place and our planet, which is part of the Living Cities Earth remit. A is alignment. So how can we bring ourselves into alignment, into coherence, our whole system? R is relationships. And E is empathy and energy. So what we started was, and this was very unusual for the groups that came, was we started with heart coherence, and we came in circle, we did some qigong, we did some movement to bring us in, and then we moved into a meditation, as we called it, presencing, to build the feel of energy. And from that, something absolutely incredible happened, because the people who came from civic society, from business, had never actually been in a situation where they were experiencing deep care. And the 4 deeps, the deep listening, the deep dialogue, the deep diversity and deep ecology, those 4 deeps were imprinted into the center of this. And what came out of this was pure heart-opening sharing. So people who were very high up in the council, one lady actually started crying. She said, I cannot believe that I'm actually able to express this without judgment and without anybody trying to fix me or what's wrong. But we were coming up with our own solutions. So when I was asked to revise the Charter for Compassion, I was so fortunate that I was able to actually ask people in our community, as well as people within Living Cities and Charter for Compassion, what this really means. So this democratic process developed. But really what happened from this was we created trust. We created trust between ourselves. It was okay to be me. It was okay to have a unique expression. It was okay to share openly what was in our hearts. And from that, actually start to take action. So we created, one of the ladies was a scribe, and she reported on everything to do with what happened in these meetings. So we've got a whole 2 years of feedback. And each time we went, we built on the next one, even though we'd think, oh, this is a good idea, we'll bring this in next time. No. We follow a pattern of these are the points that was raised last time. Let's keep building on that. We've just completed, we've said that 2 years now has been enough to do what we set out to do, which was helping people who are helping people. But what's developed from that is people want to start to embody the Charter from their own perspective. So we're building now circles based on people who are deeply involved in care for themselves. And what does that look like? How can we empower ourselves? How can we stay well so we can do what from our unique expression, what we have come to do in the world? So we still have people from charities, from what we call CICs here, community interest groups, from business. But I feel very privileged, very lucky that I'm being asked to speak in some very large gatherings now about compassion. And we bring the spiritual tribe with us to these meetings so that the energy is created, because not everybody's aware of energy of compassion that is gluing us together. So the energy is there as the words are spoken from the Charter into this group. And then people come forward and say, I'd like to have further dialogue. What can we do? So that's where we are. We've done a lot, and it's been intriguing. But just one last thing, where we really feel that we are leading forward is with the children. So the children, Peter, and it's so lovely to see you. You know, years ago we set up Vocalize, how children can have their voice heard in school, and then we build the village around that. The council, the charities who come in and help with these initiatives that are coming from the children. And now we're working with teenagers with the same thing. So circles of trust. Thanks, Ferial.
So now there's 15 minutes now. We got to do this fast. So let's see how we can do this, right? 1 minute, every person in the room, just leave your piece that you think is absolutely necessary to leave now before I wrap up. So I know Ruslan's hand was up, and then after that we had Comfort's hand up, and then we keep going. You know, if you want to go next, or I'll call out. Ruslan.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the very meaningful question you raised that the technology in the different people's hands can give different results. And actually, and also John Paul, I think, said that we need to look into the eyes of the people to share and to be really coherent. So the Meritnomical approach answered this question that every community has its own values, the system of values. Yeah? And the problem of globalization was that they were trying to put one system of values over the head of the billions of people, and that's why it failed. But what our approach is that we don't want to say what are the good values or wrong values. Yeah. We are providing the opportunity to every person or every community can answer: is it the good, this fact, this product, this action, this project for the society, or it's not? And when they answer by merits, with merits on when they are facing some project, they answer the question: is it the good for society, if not, or not? And then we have this intersubjective picture, and we can digitalize it in merits and make it how to say it, make it work to cohesion, to understand each other, to understand each other values, and at the same time it's not separated communities, because we have the meta level where we can take our common decisions. You see, you have as many votes, as many merits you have. So it's not the meritocracy, answering Peter's question in the chat. It's meritonomy. It's not the power of meritocrats. It's the power of merits, and it's absolutely different shift in understanding of how the society works. And I put the link to the presentation to our platform to Peter, and I really expect that Peter will put his platform too, because we need to collaborate, because it's not the point of competition, it's the point of cooperation. We have a lack of time. I think that maximum 5-10 years within which we have to create the new network which will influence on the global level to what's happening, the control of AI, the control of power of people who take decisions about war and peace, etc. We need to change this. That's what I wanted to say. And I can put the link to my GitHub. There is a book about Meritonomic and Meritera. It's free. You can see it, and in a really expect some how to say it, your opinion about it. And it's an invitation for the global Meritera initiative. So I'm stopping.
And I think Ruslan's heart, and most of us here, is we don't have the ultimate answer. We're not, it's about doing it together. We make it better together, because we see perspectives and aspects that the other person cannot at that point, given, where they find themselves. So it is important that it has to be done together, right? And that there's agency given to different voices to input. So we have Comfort. And I wanted to say that we're right now at Living Cities Earth, we're busy working on an application for a grant where actually they haven't put a ceiling for us even on how much we need to ask for, which is really great. And we'd like to include many of you in that, because it is about prototyping, showing prototypes in cities. So again, your cities that you're representing, the technologies you're representing, let's bring it together. Let's work together and see, how do we offer something now as that low-hanging fruit right at the beginning, showing what's the possibility of becoming those living city or city labs, because it can be any city, anywhere. And we are, as some of you mentioned, or Michael in particular said, small. We are focusing on the small to mid-sized towns right now. That is what our main attention is. Not that we're going to ignore everybody else, but we think that's where we can see the most progress in a short amount of time, in order to then provide those same solutions to bigger places. That said, Comfort, please, and then we'll move on. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for that, Fariel. I think also just learning about that grant is quite exciting. I just wanted to say, now that Ruslan has actually touched on it, I was about to mention similar points to say. I think the common thread that I'm hearing is it's about a system of values and developing a system of values. And I appreciate that, different communities, different cultures will always have, nuance, and there'll be variation in what people value. I think I want to just touch on from my perspective, and also in our practice in architecture, our first value is people, right? And we believe that when you first value people, then you can design for people, right? You can't design for people that you don't value. And only once you value the person, then we can collaborate, right? Collaboration can only be meaningful when the people involved in the collaboration value each other. And that, for me, is what then produces innovation, right? Innovation is the result of meaningful collaboration between people who value each other. And that then is the fundamental definition of our fourth value in our company, which is excellence, right? So when people who value each other collaborate meaningfully, produce innovation, that innovation, by definition, is excellence, right? And those four, when they work, together, produce sustainable outcomes, which then becomes, now we're talking into the realm of sustainability and ecology. And I think when Michael was touching on, the ethical, ecological, and empowering, I think that was quite a powerful way to create a framework for how we can create, acknowledge that there is nuance in people's value systems and value approaches, but we can create a framework that, ensures there's a sense of, I want to say, equity or meaningful engagement between different people. So at the end of the day, it is about a system of values. And I think only through valuing people, having meaningful collaboration, having innovation between people who collaborate with each other, that produces excellence, and ultimately that leads to sustainable outcomes, both for cities, but also for communities. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Comfort. Now Tim hasn't said anything, so I want to just give Tim a moment to say something, and then Liv, would you wrap up a little bit for us, because you've also just come in, and I will then just do a final call for us and then close, because then Alexander and Tim is going to take us into our last hour of the Connect-a-thon. So Tim, please.
Just appreciation. I'd love to connect with everybody who's talking platform systems in the background, so please reach out to me. And we'll set up a meeting and we'll share notes and platforms. But other than that, fantastic. Back to you, Fariel.
Thank you, Tim. Liv.
I'll pick up. It's interesting. It's about soon 7 a.m. On the west coast of North America. And when I joined, Michael was speaking, and listening to you, Michael, for a few minutes, I thought, okay, that's another Martin Luther King. And then Sue came into the sort of room, and she was speaking. I thought, wow, that's another Martin Luther King. So we have such a passionate and, dynamic, innovative people in the room that I felt this is the future of the earth. And, another person with whom we met just a couple of days ago in California, some of you know him, is Said Davlabani, who recently published this second, I think, book called Second Sapiens. And it's basically about that current civilization and the way, not us, right, here in the room, but most people are organized, their consciousness, their relations is not sustainable. And so if we don't move to the second sort of wave of human civilization, we will not be able to create a sustainable, living on Earth in harmony with each other, with the rest of nature, etc. So our idea, which we were discussing with Said and many other people, including some here in the room, was how we create this global education initiative, right? So we work and engage people in positions of authority, power, but also upcoming leaders, young leaders, sort of adult throughout the world, to share with them all of our ideas, those fantastic, technologies we're discussing here, approaches. So this is what we're working on, and we invite, of course, everybody to join to make this real world impact through our own initiatives, which each one of us is leading today, but also creating the network of initiatives and inviting people into our sort of global community of positive change. And to add one word to amazing, I love ethics and ecology and empowerment and many other frameworks which were shared, totally subscribe to them. I will add one word, and I'm sure that we mentioned it several times today, is love. The energy of love is what helps us to connect meaningfully with other people, to connect with the rest of nature, and to produce results even when sometimes we feel we don't have enough power as is. So thank you, and yes, I wanted to say God bless you, but then I thought, okay, let's move on.
Well, yes, may God bless us, Lev. So, bringing it to a close now. What we've explored today is not just an idea, right? It's not even just a framework. It's a recognition that the future of our cities and the future of life on this planet is something we are already shaping. All of us in this room and every other person on the planet, even if they're sitting on their couch at home, they are shaping the future. And the question is, will we do it by default? Or as Comfort said, or will we do it with intention? The greater the intention, I can guarantee us, the greater result we're going to have, and the greater, I think, this better world we dream of, we're going to live into. Now, I started saying that a lot of us here are from Living Cities Earth. Now, at Living Cities Earth, through what I mentioned earlier also as the Global Mayors Academy, in particular, what we call now the City Leaders Program, our vision is to inspire, interconnect, and empower 1 million leaders of positive change. Why 1 million? Because we broke it down and we said if there are 10,000 cities right now, if we have 100 inspired leaders that are educated in an entirely different manner, in an integral way, and I think it was Comfort also that said, about sustainability, and I think we're moving beyond that now towards regeneration. Regenerative cities, places where life truly can flourish in harmony with itself. So all of nature working in alignment, flow, I would say. And that begins with every one of us in this room, and in particular with the leaders in our cities, the people who do have the agency. Again, Comfort, I think you said that, apologies that I'm referring to you again, but you said, it's about who has the agency right now. Now, that agency needs to be broadened to more of the citizens, but right now in most of the cities, it is still those that are in particular, leadership positions. So if we are here, we are already a leader within our city, our community, and a system that we're a part of. So the invitation is this: let's keep finding each other. Right? I'm going to put my details into the chat, and I want you to do the same. Let's connect and let's begin activating our cities together. You right now are an activation factor wherever you are. So we want to work with you. Now imagine at least 100 people in each city across 10,000 cities worldwide. You're already the first of that 100. And for Cape Town, I think we're already 4 or 5 here. So and Tshwane has some, and we have Buenos Aires has one at least here. So the point is we have plenty to already start with. Not someday, but now. So whether you join us as faculty, ambassadors, affiliates, or simply someone committed to your city, we want to work with you. I said at the beginning, this is not going to be done by one group of people. So let's forget about it being Living Cities Earth or any other flag. It is a container, an offering to say, we can take this, we can make this ours, and we can reach out to the world where we are and make that difference. Thank you so much for attending the Connectathon. It was beautiful. Thank you for all of you that have contributed to this conversation. It was a magnificent conversation because you were here. Thank you so much. Go keep doing what you do in your cities. Keep holding what you're holding. It is incredibly inspiring. Thank you so much. I'm going to pass it back to Tim. And Tim, take us into our last hour. Thank you.